Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to part 4 of the Housefire 25. If you're not familiar with this mini-series, this is essentially me determining which 25 pieces of my vinyl collection would I have to save if there was a house fire and for some reason there was a 25-piece limit on what I could save. I'm sure I'd try to save more, but in this scenario, I was only able to grab 25. And I've been doing 5 records each episode. And so now we're on episode number 4. So that means we're talking about 15 through 20. Now, these are not in any kind of order, if you haven't already realized that. It's just the 5 that I've decided are going into the batch. And then once I reach 25, that is it. And in case you didn't watch the first 3 episodes, if you look down in the video description, I'll have links to go watch those if you care about catching up on all this shit. All right, so without further ado, let's find out which 5 records have made the cut this time. This first one, I actually kind of went back and forth on whether or not it was going to make the cut or not, because there's a long list that I have to whittle down. But eventually, I just thought about it, and I went, well, this album is very important to me personally, and it's just it's one of the best albums, one of the best debut albums of all time. Appetite for Destruction from Guns N' Roses. This is a 1987 US pressing of this album. Obviously, it's not the first pressing because the first pressing had a different cover, but to be honest, I actually prefer this cover over the original. The first time I owned this album back in like 88, it was on cassette and this was the cover. So maybe that's part of it. Like this is how it's always looked to me. And I've always thought it's a very iconic album cover. So I'm happy to have an original with this cover. Man, I still remember being 9 years old and looking at these dudes on the back cover. I'm like, look at these badass motherfuckers right here. They're the real deal. So let's take a look at this. There's the inner sleeve. The inner sleeve has the original artwork, which is cool, but it's kind of like, for an album cover. I'm still confused at its inclusion even in the insert. And then on the other side, we have all the lyrics and the credits and all that shit. And back in the day, you didn't own a whole lot of albums, and so you would read, or I would read all of the liner notes. And I just remember that there was this weird line written at the very bottom. And I'm like, what does that mean? And it ended up being a lyric in a later song. It says, with your bitch slap rapping and your cocaine tongue, you get nothing done. Which would end up being a line from You Could Be Mine years later. All right, let's take a look at the record. This is a really cool one because, yeah, sure, it's Geffen Records, but, it's got the cool sides. Side G and side R. So, yeah, not a lot, but cool to me. Now, obviously, I didn't buy this back in 1987, and so, of course, there is something missing from this pressing. Apparently, it came with a sticker, but, and this many years later, I'm surprised that it's still actually in this good a shape. But yeah, this album, personally speaking, it really sort of moved me towards heavier music. Because prior to this album, I was listening to Van Halen and Bon Jovi, Cinderella. So I was in the hard rock area, but some stuff still seemed a little scary to me. I mean, I was 9-10 years old. And this was the first one where I got so into this that it really pushed me towards heavier rock, which pushed me towards metal and blah, 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 blah. This is a very important album for me and the growth of me as a fan of rock and metal. So has to be saved. Classic album, Guns N' Roses' Appetite for Destruction. All right, moving up to 1989, but still staying in this heavier hard rock area. And this one's very special to me because it's an amazing album and it's a band from my hometown of Austin, Texas. 1989 pressing of the first Dangerous Toys album. So this one's always been a big deal to me just because I was a kid still. I wasn't able to go downtown to the clubs and go to shows, but on TV and MTV and things like that, you would hear about these bands that were like the big deal. You'd see their interviews and everything. And I just remember Dangerous Toys was like from the town that I lived in. This rock band exists and they made it and they're on MTV. Like it was a big fucking deal for me. A big like bit of inspiration for me to say, hey, maybe one day I could do that. I didn't, but I tried. But it's only because I wasn't this good. For those of you, and there you go, the gang, including Mr. Jason McMaster, and I love the Death T-shirt on the back. And honestly, that makes sense for somebody like me, because I love this album and I love bands like Death. It just, I don't know, it all seems to go together. I don't know why people seem to think they don't, but whatever. Dangerous Toys, let's look at the inside of the record here. Here is the inner sleeve. So here you have this, and it's upside down. And there you go. You can like slow that down and read the whole thing if you really want to. And then the other side has all the lyrics and the Dangerous Toys logo. And then the record here, pretty basic Columbia Records label there. And they just got a 1 and a 2. They didn't get a D and a T. But, I don't know. I guess they wouldn't want to copy Guns N' Roses. They were a band that kind of already got kind of lumped in with all of those anyway. Did I say this was a U.S. pressing from 89? It is. And there's really only been one repressing of this, and it was a twofer repressing, I think, by Steamhammer, that had this album and Hellacious Acres like together. Actually, I used to have that, and I seem to remember that the reason why I ended up selling it was because I didn't like the way that it sounded, and then I ended up forking over some money for this. But I still don't have Hellacious Acres. If anyone wants to send me a few $100s for me to buy that, I would appreciate it. But I guess also this has a little added extra special place in my heart, because I did a video about this album 5+ years ago when I first started doing videos on YouTube. And then a couple years later, I just happened to get contacted by Mr. McMaster himself. And since then, we're like semi-buddies. And you know what? That's great, because never in my wildest dreams did I imagine that I would even be semi-buddies with the singer of Dangerous Toys. So, and so many other great bands. I don't need to talk to you about Jason McMaster. Dude fucking rules. This band rules, this album rules. This one makes the cut, the debut, Dangerous Toys. All right, sticking to the more personal releases for me. I've talked about this one quite a few times. America's Least Wanted from Ugly Kid Joe. This is a 1992 European pressing. And this album, I think the first time I kind of really talked about it was on the really early Cranked and Ranked episode where we ranked Ugly Kid Joe. And I talked about how this album came out when I was in high school, and it kind of feels, I feel like I've said this in so many videos, it feels kind of like me and who I was when I was in high school. I was like a rock kid, but I kind of really didn't fit in anywhere, and I didn't take things too seriously, but I was really passionate about the stuff that I loved and music in general. And for some reason, the vibe of this album has always just kind of felt like high school aged young head, I guess. Let's look at the insert for this one. Nice big photo of the dudes there with Whitfield Crane looking gorgeous as usual. And on the other side, you have that America's Least Wanted kind of logo thing with some song lyrics and credits and whatnot. And this is kind of a different looking Mercury label because it's from Europe and not America. The American Mercury labels looks a little bit different, but also in 92, I don't really know if they were even putting out records in the US for Mercury, which is another reason why this is one that I'm going to grab. Because yes, there has been a recent repressing that's only available in Australia. Those things are fucking expensive, and who knows what the quality of that is. If you have one, let me know. But I would rather have an original pressing of this beloved album, old head beloved album, America's Least Wanted from Ugly Kid Joe. All right, we're going in chronological order, and so we're sticking in 1992 for right now. And another record that I did a very early video on, but it's one of my most prized possessions. In 1992, UK pressing of Countdown to Extinction from Megadeth. This album was a very big deal for me. I had heard Megadeth prior to this, but this was the first Megadeth album I bought. I bought it on CD, obviously, in 92. And I've just always loved it. I love every second of it. I love how it sounds, which is a big thing. As you all know, I do not like any of the remixed, remastered Megadeth stuff. And so many times, even today, I still see people like posting videos and stuff, and it's always these really bad remixed versions of these songs that already sounded fucking great. So, of course, I want to have an OG version of this because I love how it sounds. And man, I've always loved that back cover. That is so fucking rad. All right, the inner sleeve of this one. All right, we've got some very serious looking photos of the band. They are very moody this time around. And there's your dinner right there. And then on the other side, of course, we've got lyrics. I mean, that's exactly what I want on a printed inner sleeve. Some pictures of the band, a little bit of artwork, and most importantly, some lyrics. Because I read lyrics, and so I know what these songs are about. Apparently, a whole lot of people my age did not do that. All right, so this one, Capitol Records, pretty basic there. Nothing to write home about, but, you know, I don't care. I just love that I have this original version on vinyl. And spoiler alert, if you didn't watch in one of the earlier episodes, it may have been the last one, I talked about my original copy of Rust in Peace, because that's another classic that I think sounds perfect, and I hate that anybody ever fucked with it. Anybody, meaning Dave Mustaine. But anyway, yes, I love this album so much, so it made the cut. Countdown to Extinction from Megadeth. Okay, wrapping up the first 20 of the Housefire 25 and wrapping it up in 1993 with another one that in this form is not probably ever going to be reissued. And so I'm very happy to have an original of this album that I love so much, Sound of White Noise from Anthrax. Another album that I've probably talked about at great length so many times. So if you've watched a lot of my stuff, you've already heard. But basically I got into Anthrax around the time that Persistence of Time was coming out. So I got Persistence of Time, I got Attack of the Killer Bees, and I was a full-fledged Anthrax fan. And then all of a sudden I hear that they kicked out Joey Belladonna, and I'm like, oh, that kind of fucking sucks. And then they announced the new guy, John Bush, who at that point I didn't know who the fuck he was. And I was pretty skeptical in the lead up to this album. But once I heard the lead single only and saw that music video, I was absolutely sold. So I bought this album on CD when it came out. And on CD, it's just that little square is the album cover. But this is the big fold out thing from the CD. But the original vinyl has this whole thing as the album cover. And there's only 2 versions that have this particular album cover. This one's from Europe. Did I say that? Yeah, from Europe from 1993. Anyway, I mean, I once again, this is an album that I love how it sounds. I love every song on it. And it is my favorite John Bush era Anthrax album. And once again, I guess it's just that time period. I was in high school. I was a teenager. And I think something happens with your brain growing and your taste growing and the music that you're absorbing. And so that stuff remains very important to you, or at least I feel like it should. And so this is a big deal for me. Let's take a look at the inner sleeve of this one. Hey, guess what? There's pictures of the band, but on this side, what the fuck is that? I have no idea. It kind of hurts my eyes to look at it. But on the other side, you have a cool picture of the band at the coffee shop. And then, of course, lyrics that are printed so small that these days I definitely need to wear my glasses to read them. And then here you go. Pretty basic Elektra Records labels there. And once again, I just love having this album in this original form on vinyl. The interesting thing about this original pressing, though, is that if you look at the track list on the back on side B, Black Lodge does not appear on this. Now, I realize it was probably because of like time constraints. And I think maybe even the band didn't think they were going to release that as a single, because I think if they had already known that was part of the plan, they would have probably removed a different song. But I actually have the 10-inch single of Black Lodge that also came out in 1993. So technically I have the whole album, but I'm not going to add that one. That's there's too many records, and I can't. So I have to just take this one. Okay, Black Lodge can just live in my head if my entire house is burned down and there's no way to listen to music. That's not part of the scenario. Quit rewriting scenarios, old head. All right, this is this one's. I love this one. So there you go. Anthrax, Sound of White Noise makes the cut in the first 20. All right, so now we're down to only 5 pieces of vinyl from my collection. So the next episode might take a little while to come out. Or maybe I'll just say fuck it and try to come up with a last 5 that I'm happy with, because no matter what, I'm having to leave stuff behind that I absolutely love. But I guess that's a good problem to have. You've got so many records, and so many records that you absolutely love are right now in your collection. So how about let's not have any house fires or any other kind of disasters. I'm not even religious. I don't know who I'm talking to. Talking to Ceiling Fan. Mr. Ceiling Fan, please. But anyway, that is it. More of me babbling while holding a record. That's the Old Head channel. I should just put that in the description for people who are new. Hey, here's this dude, and you don't know him, but he babbles about records while holding them, and that's it. I guess I do some other stuff too. Anyway, doesn't matter. I love that you guys watch my shit and you're still here. You're very much appreciated. And no, that's all I got. All right. Thank you for watching, and I will see you all again very soon.